At a crowded Sunday brunch, laughter echoed too sharp to be warm. A mimosa lifted, a smirk across my mother's face, and words laced with venom, "You're lucky we even include you." They thought my silence meant surrender. They thought I was still the convenient one. But that night, I decided they'd never use me again, and when I moved, I would move in a way none of them could recover from. My name is Elena Monroe, and at 34, I'd perfected the art of becoming invisible at family gatherings while still being entirely too visible when they needed something. The restaurant hummed with that particular Sunday energy silverware against porcelain, the hiss of espresso machines, conversations bleeding into each other like watercolors. Natural light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the bubbles in champagne flutes and casting rainbow fragments across white tablecloths. Our corner table at the Meridian should have felt intimate. Instead, it felt like a stage where I was always cast as the fool. My mother, Vivian, held court as she always did, her auburn hair freshly blown out, her laugh a practiced melody that drew glances from neighboring tables. She wore the Hermes scarf I'd bought her last Christmas, a detail she'd never acknowledge. To her left, my Aunt Claudette picked at her eggs, Benedict with theatrical delicacy, diamonds catching light every time she lifted her fork, and across from me, my older brother Miles sprawled in his chair like he owned not just the space, but the entire establishment, his wedding ring catching the light, the wedding I'd paid for when his credit cards maxed out. "Elena, darling." Claudette's voice cut through my observations, syrup sweet and sharp as glass. "You look tired. Sterling and Wells working you to the bone again." Before I could respond, Miles snorted. "At least she has a job." Remember when she thought she'd be an artist? He gestured at my black blazer and simple white blouse. "Now look at her, corporate drone extraordinaire." The server approached young, eager, probably working through college. I recognized the exhaustion behind her smile. As she refilled our water glasses, Miles made a show of examining my outfit. "Is that the same blazer from last year's Christmas dinner?" He spoke loud enough for the server to hear, loud enough for the table of women behind us to pause their conversation. "Elena, you really should invest in your appearance. No wonder you're still single." The server's hand trembled slightly as she poured. I wanted to tell her it was fine, that this was normal, that I'd learned to breathe underwater years ago. Instead, I kept my face neutral, the way I did when examining fraudulent accounts at work, detached, analytical, waiting for patterns to emerge. Vivian's laugh tinkled like breaking crystal. "Oh, Miles, be nice. Your sister's just practical, always has been." She turned to me, and that's when she lifted her mimosa, that smirk spreading across her face like an oil spill. "You're lucky we even include you, Elena. Some families wouldn't tolerate such a wet blanket." The words hung in the air, each one a small laceration. Claudette tittered behind her napkin. Miles raised his glass in mock toast. The server fled. I felt something shift inside me, tectonic plates realigning after years of pressure. It wasn't pain, I'd grown numb to that. It was clarity, sharp and absolute. I saw them suddenly as if through the wrong end of a telescope, small, grasping, predictable. They thought my silence was submission. They thought I was a resource to be mined, a well that would never run dry. "More champagne?" Vivian waved at another server, already moving past this moment, confident in my compliance. I watched her order another bottle, the expensive one, naturally. She'd expect me to grab the check, as always. "For all you do for us," she'd say, as if acknowledgement was payment enough, as if I should be grateful for the privilege of being bled dry. The fresh mimosas arrived. They toasted to something Claudette's new yacht club membership, Miles's latest scheme that would definitely work this time. I lifted my glass but didn't drink. The champagne would go flat. By tonight, everything would change. They didn't notice I'd stopped participating in the conversation. They never really noticed me at all, except as a function Elena the solver, Elena the provider, Elena the perpetually available ATM. That was about to end. The exploitation started so gradually I didn't notice until I was drowning in it. At 22, fresh out of college with my accounting degree, I was the first Monroe to have a real career. My father was still alive then, struggling with his failing construction business, and I was so eager to help. Just this once became my motto, just until things get better. The first time was a plane ticket for Vivian. She'd booked a non-refundable trip to Sedona for a spiritual retreat without checking her bank balance. "Elena, sweetheart, you know I'm good for it. Your father's business is just in a rough patch." She never paid me back. The retreat photos on Facebook showed her at a 5-star resort, champagne in hand. Then came Miles's credit card debts, $25,000 in gambling losses he'd hidden from everyone. He'd shown up at my apartment at 2 in the morning, actually crying the only time I'd ever seen him vulnerable. "They're going to break my legs. Elena, please, I'll pay you back with interest." That was 8 years ago. The interest never materialized, but his expensive watches did. His weekend trips to Vegas continued. Claudette was subtler. She'd invite me to lunch, order the most expensive items, then discover she'd forgotten her wallet. She'd need help with a hotel booking that somehow never got reimbursed, a loan for her boutique that was always about to turn profitable next quarter. 20,000 here, 30,000 there, death by 1,000 cuts. Each one justified with "family helps family," but the Lake Lure cabin that was the masterpiece of their manipulation. In 2008, when the market crashed, my father faced bankruptcy. The cabin, our family's supposed treasure, was weeks from foreclosure. I was 26, had just gotten my position as a forensic auditor at Sterling & Wells, and had somehow saved $40,000. "Put it in your name," my father begged. "Just temporarily. You have the credit score, the stable income. It'll save us all." He died 2 years later, heart attack at his desk, still trying to salvage his business. And somehow, the cabin in my name became the family vacation home where I was a guest. Vivian redecorated it without asking. Miles brought his college friends there for weekends, leaving it trashed for me to clean. Claudette hosted her book club there monthly. The property taxes, the maintenance, the utilities all mine to pay. $900 monthly, for 15 years. Over $160,000 for a property where my own mother acted like she was doing me a favor by letting me visit. I became the family's financial forensic auditor in reverse instead of finding fraud. I was funding it. Every family crisis had my bank account as its solution. Vivian's root canal, Miles's DUI lawyer, Claudette's divorce attorney, the family reunions I paid for but was barely included in, the Christmas gifts I gave that were critiqued for being thoughtless, while theirs to me were IOUs that never materialized. At work, I investigated embezzlement schemes, traced hidden assets, uncovered financial abuse. I could spot a con from 1,000 yards, except when it came from people who shared my blood. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built my career on exposing exactly what my family did to me daily. Last month, I'd run the numbers. Between the cabin, the loans, the credit cards I'd paid off, the emergencies that were never emergencies I'd given them over $400,000, money that could have been my retirement, my freedom, my life lived on my terms instead of theirs. They'd trained me well, though. Every boundary I tried to set was met with guilt. After everything we've done for you, what, exactly, given birth to me, allowed me to exist in their presence? The manipulation was so refined, so elegant, that I'd sometimes convinced myself I was the selfish one for wanting to keep what I'd earned. But sitting at that brunch table, watching them laugh at my expense while planning their next extraction, something crystallized. I wasn't family to them. I was infrastructure. And infrastructure doesn't get respected. It gets used until it breaks. They thought I was broken. They were wrong. I was done. The breaking point arrived dressed as dessert. Miles had ordered the tableside bananas Foster, making a performance of it, insisting the entire restaurant needed to witness his sophistication. As the server prepared the flambé, blue flames dancing in the copper pan, My brother decided to entertain our neighboring tables with another round of humiliation. "You know," he announced, voice carrying across the dining room. "My sister here actually wore that same outfit to my engagement party, and my wedding, and last Easter." He gestured at my blazer with his champagne flute. "Elena, don't they pay you enough at Sterling and whatever, or are you saving up to buy personality?" The couple at the next table shifted uncomfortably. The server's hands fumbled with the cinnamon. Claudette released a theatrical gasp that fooled no one, while Vivian pressed her lips together in that way that meant she was suppressing laughter, not disapproval. "Miles," Vivian said, but her tone was indulgent, amused. "Your sister is just careful with money, aren't you, Elena? Always squirreling it away? Though for what? We'll never know. It's not like you have anyone to spend it on." The flames from the dessert cast shadows across their faces, and in that flickering light, I saw them clearly not as family, but as parasites who'd grown so comfortable feeding that they'd forgotten I could feel the bite. Claudette leaned forward, diamond earrings swaying. "Maybe if you smiled more, Elena. Men don't like women who look so severe. You have such a pretty face when you try." "When she tries," Miles echoed, and they all laughed. The server finished the dessert in record time and retreated. The flames died down, leaving only the sick sweet smell of burnt sugar and rum. I watched them dive into the dessert, 3 spoons attacking 1 plate, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. Not breaking implies violence, noise, drama. This was quieter, a severing, clean and surgical. I'd spent 12 years analyzing financial crimes, understanding how predators operated. They always had the same pattern: identify the mark, establish trust, normalize the taking, then escalate until the victim had nothing left. The only difference between my family and the criminals I investigated was that my family had started when I was too young to recognize the con. "Elena's not even eating," Miles observed, caramel on his chin. "Too good for dessert now." "She's probably calculating the calories," Claudette added. "Though honestly, dear, at your age, what's the point? It's not like you're 20 anymore." Vivian reached across the table and patted my hand. Her touch was cold, perfunctory. "Don't mind them, sweetheart. We tease because we love." "You know that, right? It's just that you're so easy to rile up. You take everything so personally." Her hand lingered on mine, and I noticed her manicure, the one I'd paid for last week when her card was mysteriously declined. The rose gold bracelet on her wrist, my birthday gift to her that she'd never thanked me for. The subtle Botox that smoothed her forehead charged to my credit card during one of her emergencies. "I'm not riled up," I said quietly. They paused, perhaps noting something different in my tone, but the moment passed quickly. They didn't really see me, after all. I was furniture that dispensed money reliable, ignorable, replaceable. "Good," Vivian said, already turning back to the dessert. "Because honestly, Elena, your sensitivity is exhausting. We walk on eggshells around you." The lie was so bold, so breathtaking, that I almost admired it. They hadn't walked carefully around me a day in their lives. They stomped, they trampled, they carved pieces off me and complained I bled on their shoes. Miles flagged down the server for the check. When it arrived, he made a show of reaching for his wallet, patting his pockets with exaggerated concern. "Oh, damn. Left my wallet in the Tesla. Elena, you got this, I'll Venmo you." He wouldn't. He never did. And they all knew it. I reached for my purse, pulled out my credit card. The server ran it, brought it back. I signed the receipt, added a 40% tip the server deserved combat pay for witnessing this. As we prepared to leave, Vivian air-kissed my cheek. "Same time next month. Darling O, and remember, the cabin's property tax is due next week. You haven't forgotten, have you?" "I haven't forgotten anything," I said. She didn't catch the weight in those words. None of them did. They walked out laughing, planning their next extraction, confident in their supply chain. I sat alone for a moment after they left, staring at the remnants of burnt sugar on the plate. The couple at the next table kept shooting me sympathetic glances. The server returned, perhaps to check if I was okay. "I'm fine," I told her, and for the first time in years, I meant it. I wasn't hurt anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was something far more dangerous to them. I was done. The math was simple. They'd taken everything they could. But they'd made one crucial error. They'd taught me exactly who they were. And now, I was going to teach them exactly who I'd become. The drive home took 17 minutes. By the time I walked through my apartment door, I'd already mapped out every cut I was going to make. My laptop sat on the kitchen counter where I'd left it that morning. I opened it, fingers steady as they flew across the keyboard. First, the email to Robert Halsey, the real estate attorney who'd helped with the cabin transfer back in 2008. He'd warned me then about keeping property in my name for others. I hadn't listened. "Robert, I need to list the Lake Lure property immediately. Price it to sell fast. No contingencies. Cash buyers preferred. Please begin paperwork ASAP. E. Monroe." Send. Next, the credit cards. I had 3 that I'd added them as authorized users on over the years emergency access that had become their personal shopping accounts. Chase Sapphire first. Click, click. Remove authorized user Vivian Monroe. Remove authorized user Miles Monroe. Remove authorized user Claudette Harrison. Cards canceled. New cards ordered. Shipped to my office. Bank of America next. Same process. Then American Express. Each removal felt like cutting a rope that had been wrapped around my throat. The joint checking account I'd opened with Vivian for household expenses had $87,000 in it, all my money. But she had full access. I initiated an immediate transfer to my personal account. Every penny. The account would stay open but empty. A hollow shell she could scream into. My phone buzzed. Robert Halsey. Despite it being Sunday evening. "Elena, are you sure I can list tomorrow morning?" "Tonight, if possible." I typed back. The utility accounts came next. Electric, water, internet, and cable for the cabin, all in my name. All on autopay from my accounts. Cancel autopay. Effective immediately. They had 30 days before shutoff, but that wasn't my problem anymore. The property management company that maintained the grounds contract terminated. Effective end of month. My fingers moved with the same precision I used when tracking embezzled funds. Each keystroke deliberate, irreversible. This wasn't emotional. This was mathematics. Subtraction, to be specific. The storage unit downtown where I kept paying for Vivian's treasures, she couldn't fit in her condo cancel autopay. Email notice to the facility that I would no longer be responsible after the current month expired. Let her figure out what to do with her 3rd wedding dress and the furniture from her failed interior design business. Miles's car insurance. He'd been on my policy for 5 years because his DUIs made his rates astronomical. Remove vehicle. Remove driver. Policy updated. He had 10 days before the cancellation took effect. 10 days to figure out his own life. Claudette's cell phone, she'd been on my business plan since 2016. Remove line. Port number to a prepaid service that would expire in 30 days. A courtesy I shouldn't extend, but I wasn't cruel. Just done. The family Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max. Disney Plus account's password changed on all of them. 2-factor authentication enabled. My phone as the only authorized device. My emergency fund account had the $150,000 I'd managed to save despite their constant drainage. I moved it to a new bank entirely, one they didn't know existed. Changed my direct deposit. Updated my 401k beneficiaries, removed all of them. Added a local animal shelter instead. The life insurance policy that listed Vivian as the primary beneficiary changed to the same shelter. Let the dogs benefit from my death since my family had benefited enough from my life. Each action took seconds but carried the weight of years. I wasn't destroying anything, I was simply stopping my own destruction. They'd lived off me like I was a trust fund that would never run dry. But I wasn't an inheritance. I was a person who'd finally realized she had the power to turn off the tap. My phone started buzzing with credit card notifications. Your authorized user has attempted a transaction that was declined. 3 from Vivian at Nordstrom, 2 from Miles at a sports bar, 1 from Claudette at Whole Foods. I turned the phone to silent and continued working. The cabin was the masterpiece, though. 15 years of payments, maintenance, improvements, all about to be converted into cash they couldn't touch. Market value was around $400,000, even with a quick sale at $350. After paying off the small remaining mortgage, I'd clear $300,000. My money, my investment, my return. I pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been keeping for years, every loan, every payment, every dinner, every emergency. $437,000 over 12 years, not including interest I could have earned, not including opportunity cost, just pure extraction. They'd never pay me back, but I was about to pay myself back, with interest. The laptop screen glowed in the darkening apartment. Outside, Charlotte's skyline began to light up, offices emptying, normal people living normal lives where family meant support, not sabotage. I made one final change: my emergency contact at work, at my doctor, at everything. Changed from Vivian Monroe to no one. It was the most honest thing I'd typed all day. Tomorrow, they'd start to realize. The declined cards would be confusing at first, then annoying, then panic-inducing. But tonight, they were probably still laughing about Brunch, planning their next manipulation, secure in their supply chain. I closed the laptop, poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff I never opened when they visited, and stood at my window, watching the city pulse with life. For the first time in my adult life, every dollar I earned would be mine. Every choice would be mine. Every boundary would be real. The wire had been cut. Now I just had to wait for them to notice they were falling. Monday morning arrived with a symphony of notifications. The first text came at 6:43 a.m. from Miles. Card got declined at Starbucks. WTF, call me. I didn't call. I showered, dressed in the same black blazer he'd mocked because spite is its own fashion statement, and made my own coffee. 7:15 a.m. Vivian. Elena, honey, something wrong with the electric account. They're saying it's past due, but you handle that. Please fix ASAP. 7:28 a.m. Miles again. Seriously, Elena, this isn't funny. My card got declined at the gas station, in front of people. 7:31 a.m. Claudette. Grocery store saying I'm not authorized on the account anymore. Must be an error. Handle it. I sat in my office at Sterling and Wells, reviewing legitimate fraud cases, while my phone lit up like a crisis center. The parallel was not lost on me at work. I protected strangers from financial predators. At home, I'd been feeding them. By noon, the texts had evolved from confused to demanding. Vivian, called the bank. They say you removed me from the account. This is unacceptable. We need to talk now. Miles, you changed the Netflix password. Are you having some kind of breakdown? Claudette, the cell phone company says my line will be discontinued. Elena, what is going on? This is not how family behaves. That last one almost made me laugh. They were finally learning what my behavior looked like when I acted exactly like they did, putting myself first. At 2:17 p.m., the calls started. Vivian first, her voicemail dripping with manufactured concern. Sweetheart, I'm worried about you. This isn't like you. Call me back so we can sort out this misunderstanding. Miles, less subtle. Pick up your fucking phone, Elena. By 4 p.m., they'd formed a group chat. I watched the messages pile up, a real-time documentary of their unraveling. Vivian, she's lost her mind. Miles, she can't do this. That cabin is family property. Claudette, I have the receipt from that Whole Foods trip. I need those groceries for my book club tonight. Vivian, Robert Halsey just called me about listing the cabin. She can't sell it without our permission. Miles, yes, she can. It's in her name. Vivian, but we agreed. Miles, you agreed. With yourself. It's legally hers. Claudette, This is about brunch yesterday. She's being oversensitive again. The real panic started when Claudette sent a photo at 5:43 p.m. The Lake Lure cabin with a bright red "for sale" sign planted in the front yard. Robert had worked fast. Vivian, no, 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 no. Miles, that's our inheritance. Claudette, my book club is supposed to meet there Thursday. Vivian tried calling 17 times in the next hour. Miles, 23. Claudette sent voice messages that progressed from wheedling to threatening to crying. I documented everything: screenshots, saved voicemails, my forensic auditor instincts. Hard at work. At 7:21 p.m., Vivian played her trump card, a text that once would have destroyed me. Your father would be ashamed of you. Would he? The man who'd begged me to save him, promised it was temporary, then died leaving me holding the burden while his wife and son treated me like staff. Maybe he would be ashamed, but he'd been ashamed of a lot of things: his failures, his debts, his inability to stand up to Vivian. I'd decided I wouldn't inherit his shame along with his family's parasitism. 8:37 p.m. Miles, desperate now. I need that car insurance active. I have to drive to work tomorrow. Please, Elena, I'm sorry about brunch. No, he was sorry about consequences. There's a difference. 9:14 p.m. A text from an unknown number that I recognized as Vivian's friend, Patricia. Your mother is distraught. Whatever happened, family is family. Don't do something you'll regret. I wondered if Patricia knew about the $40,000 Vivian had borrowed from me for her medical emergency that turned out to be a mommy makeover. Probably not. The final message of the night came at 11:58 p.m. from Vivian. You want to hurt us, fine, but that cabin has your father's ashes scattered in the backyard. You're selling his soul. She was lying. Of course. Dad's ashes were in an urn in her closet, next to her third wedding dress and her expired real estate license. I knew because I'd paid for the urn, the cremation, the entire funeral while she played the grieving widow and Miles played the devastated son, and neither of them offered a penny. I turned off my phone, went to bed, and slept better than I had in years. No guilt, no anxiety, just the clean, pure exhaustion of someone who'd finally stopped carrying everyone else's weight. They thought this was the crisis. They were wrong. This was just Monday. Wait until they found out about the cabin's buyer, a developer planning to tear it down for condos. Wait until the storage unit auction. Wait until Miles's car insurance lapsed and Claudette's phone went dead. The panic was unfolding exactly as I'd calculated: mathematical, predictable, beautiful. Thursday afternoon. I drove to Lake Lure alone. The 2-hour drive from Charlotte usually felt like heading toward obligation. Today, it felt like pilgrimage. The cabin sat on 3 acres of pine-shadowed land, its wraparound porch overlooking the water. I'd paid for that porch renovation in 2018, the new roof in 2020, the kitchen remodel that Vivian had insisted on, then complained about when I chose boring granite instead of marble. Inside, everything smelled like abandoned plans. Claudette's book club wine glasses still lined the kitchen counter, lipstick stains on their rims. Miles's golf clubs leaned against the hallway wall, the set I'd bought him for his 30th birthday, back when I still believed in redemption through generosity. The living room walls held our family photos in frames I'd purchased, arranged by Vivian in a display of false harmony. There we were at Miles's graduation, my check for his student loans hidden behind our smiles. At Claudette's third wedding, my credit card still warm from paying for her dress. At Dad's funeral, where I looked hollow-eyed while they looked appropriately mournful. I moved through the house with a banker's box, collecting only what was truly mine. Not much, as it turned out. A sweater I'd left here last Christmas, a book I'd been reading on the dock, the spare glasses I kept in the nightstand. Everything else, the furniture, the decorations, the accumulated detritus of their assumed ownership, would go with the sale. In what used to be my room, the smallest, of course, tucked under the eaves, I found the journal I'd kept during that first summer after Dad died. 24 years old, grieving, and already drowning in their needs. The pages were full of budget calculations, trying to figure out how to afford the cabin's taxes while paying off Dad's hidden debts. In the margins, I'd written temporary over and over, like a prayer. 11 years. Some temporary. I photographed each room with my phone, creating a record. Evidence, really, of what I'd built and maintained while they'd played house with my money. The bathroom where Vivian had insisted on that ridiculous clawfoot tub, $4,000. The deck where Miles had hosted his engagement party, $8,000 for repairs after his friends destroyed the railing. The guest suite Claudette had claimed as her artist's retreat, $12,000 in renovations she'd designed and I'd paid for. Outside, the late afternoon sun turned the lake to copper. I walked down to the dock, my footsteps echoing on wood I'd paid to replace after hurricane damage. This was the only part I'd miss the quiet moments stolen between crises, watching herons fish in the shallows while calculating how many more years I could sustain this hemorrhaging. The for sale sign looked almost cheerful against the green lawn. Robert had texted earlier 3 offers already, one all cash at asking price. The developer who wanted to tear it down and build luxury condos. Perfect. Let them try to claim ownership of something that no longer existed. I sat on the dock's edge, feet dangling over water that reflected nothing but sky. Somewhere in Charlotte, they were probably strategizing, planning their next move. Vivian would be consulting her lawyer friends, discovering that ownership is 9/10 of the law and she had 0/10. Miles would be calculating how to maintain his lifestyle without my subsidies. Claudette would be spinning this into a story where she was the victim. Let them. I pulled out my phone and opened the email from Robert. Elena, please confirm you want to accept the cash offer. Closing can be in 2 weeks. My thumb hovered over the reply button. 2 weeks, and this place would be someone else's problem. 2 weeks and $300,000 would be mine, not even close to what they'd taken, but enough to build something new, something solely mine. Confirmed, I typed. Accept the offer. Send. A heron landed on the dock's far end, studying me with prehistoric eyes. We regarded each other, 2 creatures recognizing a fellow predator. It had learned to stand perfectly still, waiting for the right moment to strike. I'd learned the same, just taken longer to apply the lesson. I stood, boxed belongings under my arm, and walked back to the cabin. In the kitchen, I found a bottle of wine, the expensive one Vivian had been saving for a special occasion. Well, this qualified. I opened it, poured a glass, and left the bottle on the counter. Let the next owners wonder. The last thing I did was remove the spare key from under the painted rock by the door, the one they all knew about. I'd paid for 23 years of ownership, but I'd leave no way back in. The drive home was dark and quiet. In 2 weeks, the cabin would be rubble. In its place, strangers would build new dreams, untainted by manipulation and ingratitude. The poetry of it was almost too perfect they'd spend years mourning a monument to their own greed, while I'd finally be free. My phone buzzed with their messages the entire drive. I didn't look. The heron had taught me patience. The right moment to strike wasn't during the frenzy. It was after, in the stillness, when they realized the water had no more fish to give. Saturday evening, 9:43 p. Mom. The pounding on my apartment door could probably be heard 3 floors down. Elena, open this fucking door, I know you're in there. Miles. Of course he'd be the first to break rank and confront me directly. Vivian would consider such directness beneath her, and Claudette preferred to wage war through guilt and tears. But Miles had always been about brute force. I opened the door but left the chain on. Through the gap, I could see his face, flushed and distorted with rage. He'd been drinking, I could smell the bourbon from here. You sold it, he spat. You actually sold Dad's cabin. My cabin, I corrected, voice steady as a flatline. Has been for 15 years. You know that's not Jesus Christ. Elena, let me in. We need to talk about this like adults. We are talking. He slammed his palm against the doorframe. My insurance lapsed yesterday. Did you know that I got pulled over for a broken taillight and found out I'm driving illegally? Could have been arrested. Sounds like a personal problem. His eyes widened. This wasn't the Elena he knew, the one who would have apologized, rushed to fix it, eaten the cost and the blame. What the hell is wrong with you? We're family. No, I said, surprising myself with how easily the word came. Family doesn't charge each other for existing. Family doesn't make someone pay $400,000 for the privilege of being mocked. 400? You're insane. We never... I have spreadsheets, miles, 12 years of documented transfers, payments, loans. Would you like to see them? I'm sure Heather would find them interesting. His wife, who had no idea about the gambling debts I'd covered. His face went from red to white. You wouldn't. I wouldn't have. Past tense. Now I absolutely would. This is about that stupid brunch, isn't it? We were just joking. No. This is about deciding I'm done being your ATM with a pulse. The cabin closes in 10 days. The money will be mine. The insurance is your problem. The everything is your problem now. He tried a different tactic, his voice dropping to something almost vulnerable. Elena, Mom is devastated. She hasn't stopped crying. I laughed, actually laughed. Vivian doesn't cry. She leaks strategically. You're really going to do this, destroy our family over money? I'm not destroying anything. I'm just stopping the life support. There's a difference. Dad would. Dad is dead. Miles. He's been dead for 11 years. And for 11 years, I've been paying for his mistakes while you all pretend that cabin is some sacred family trust instead of the financial albatross he hung around my neck. Miles's mask finally slipped completely. You bitter bitch. No wonder nobody wants you. You're going to die alone in this apartment, counting your money like some pathetic. Goodbye, Miles. I started closing the door. He shoved his foot in the gap. We'll sue. Mom's already talking to lawyers. Good. Discovery should be interesting, especially the part where you all have to explain why someone you treated so well would do this. Judges love financial abuse cases, especially with documentation. He stared at me, perhaps finally understanding that I wasn't bluffing, wasn't having a breakdown, wasn't going to cave. I'd spent 12 years learning to read lies in financial documents. His face was an open book of panic. You can't just cut us off. We're your only family. No, I said quietly. You were my only parasites. There's a difference. I looked down at his foot still blocking my door. Move it, or I call the police. Your choice. For a moment, I thought he might actually try something physical. But Miles was a coward at heart, had always been one. That's why he'd needed his little sister to pay his gambling debts instead of facing consequences. He pulled his foot back. This isn't over. Yes, it is. That's what you're not understanding. It's been over since that brunch. You just didn't notice. You'll regret this. When you're alone on holidays. When you need us. I've been alone on holidays for years. Miles. You just showed up for the meals I paid for. And needing you. What have any of you ever provided besides bills and belittlement? He had no answer for that. Of course he didn't. Leave now, or I'm calling building security. He backed away, pointing at me like I was something contaminated. You're not the sister I knew. No, I agreed. That sister died at brunch last Sunday. You all killed her with 1,000 cuts. I'm just who's left. I closed the door, locked it, and listened to his footsteps retreat down the hallway. My hands weren't even shaking. That surprised me. I'd expected to feel something guilt, sadness, even triumph. Instead, there was just clarity, clean as fresh snow. My phone buzzed. Vivian. Miles told me about your conversation. We need to have an intervention. You're clearly having a mental health crisis. I typed back my first response to her in 5 days. The only crisis is yours, and it's financial, not mental. Then I blocked her number, then Miles, then Claudette. The silence that followed was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. 2 weeks later, The closing was done. $312,000 after all fees. I sat in the bank manager's office, watching the numbers appear in my account, not Vivian's, not the family's, mine. "Would you like to set up any automatic transfers?" the manager asked. No. No more automatic anything. I'd calculated what I owed them down to the penny. Not what they claimed I owed, what I actually owed. The answer was nothing, but I wasn't cruel. I transferred $5,000 to Vivian's personal account with a note, "For Dad's funeral expenses. We're even." It was more than generous. She'd spent $3,000 on the funeral, pocketed the rest, but this would stop her from claiming I'd left her with nothing. This would end any legal argument. This was my final receipt. The text came within minutes through a new number. 5,000. "You sold our home for over 300,000 and you send 5,000. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Miles tried once more, through a cousin's Facebook account. "Elena, Heather left me. Are you happy now? You've destroyed everything." Heather had left him because his car got repossessed, and she'd finally learned about the gambling. Nothing to do with me. Everything to do with consequences finally catching up. I blocked the cousin too. Claudette's book club apparently imploded when they showed up at the cabin to find a demolition notice. She sent a letter to my office actual paper mail, as if that would somehow penetrate my defenses. I had Sterling and Wells's security return it unopened. 3 months passed. Charlotte moved from spring into summer. I bought new clothes not because the old ones were worn, but because I wanted to. I took a vacation not to visit family, but to Italy, alone. Glorious. I ate pasta in Rome without anyone commenting on the carbs. I stood in the Sistine Chapel without anyone complaining about the lines. I existed without apology or invoice. One evening in late July, around 8:30 p.m., I saw Vivian at the Harris Teeter. She was in the wine aisle, studying prices in a way she'd never had to before. Her hair had grown out, showing gray roots. The Hermes scarf was gone. She saw me. Our eyes met across rows of Pinot Noir. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she lifted her chin, turned her back, and walked away. But I saw her put the wine back. The $20 bottle returned to the shelf. Maybe for the first time in her life, Vivian Monroe was living within her means. I bought the good champagne that night, not to celebrate her downfall, but to toast my uprising. Back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and looked at the balance in my account. Even after the Italy trip, after the new wardrobe, after actually living, I had more money than I'd ever had, because it was staying where it belonged, with the person who'd earned it. I thought about them sometimes. Not with guilt or anger, just curiosity. Were they learning to stand on their own feet? Had Miles gotten a second job? Was Claudette finally using that business degree she'd bragged about but never monetized? Was Vivian discovering what it meant to budget? I'd never know. And that was the point. They'd had a lifetime of chances to value me as more than a resource. They'd chosen exploitation instead. So I'd chosen freedom. The math was simple, really. They'd subtracted from my life for 23 years. Now I was done being their equation. I stood at my window, champagne in hand, watching Charlotte pulse with its evening energy. Somewhere out there, 3 people who shared my blood were learning what it meant to pay their own way. And here, in this apartment I'd paid for with money they couldn't touch, I was learning what it meant to be free. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. Beautiful. Earned. Mine. I raised my glass to the window, to the city, to the woman I'd become by simple subtraction. Remove the parasites. Remainder peace. The family I'd been born into had ended at that brunch, with mimosas and mockery. The family I'd chosen myself, alone. Sufficient had begun the moment I'd decided I was done. They'd been right about one thing. I was lucky they'd included me. Lucky to finally see them clearly. Lucky to learn that family isn't about blood, it's about who builds you up versus who tears you down for parts. I took a sip of champagne. It tasted like arithmetic. Clean, balanced, final. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply stop giving ourselves away to people who only see us as resources.